And gracious God, we just come before you thanking you for this day you have given us, Father, and just thank you for this country and this great state. And Father, even though we had some spirited debate today, Father, we handled it in a civil and respectful manner, and that's what makes this country and this state so great. Father, we ask that you would bless the leadership of this committee as well as each and every member assigned to it. Bless our men and women of the military and those who are here to serve the military and our veterans. And we pray these things in the mighty and unmatched name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Just so everybody knows, what we've given you is a copy of our abbreviated annual report, which is in the multicolor thing there. And then we've got a more detailed briefing overview of our agency, which I'm not going to go through directly, but I'm just going to try and hit some highlights. We are the state VA. We're not the federal VA. Our role, as George Canavaggio, who's my fellow assistant commissioner and handles our field operations and appeals side of the house, will tell you in a heartbeat. Our role is not basically to approve anything. Our role is to support and to assist veterans in their claims that they have with the VA, so that hopefully the VA will give them a decision that is one that is beneficial to them and of course meets the requirements of the federal law. We're organized basically into two main units, field operations and appeals, which handles our 52 field offices that we have around the state, plus I guess we're still somewhere around 25 satellite locations that we visit on a periodic basis. I just love this microphone. It's always done this. Every time I've been over here, cuts in and out. This is a great piece of equipment. Is that what it is? Anyway, they are, some of them are one-person offices, some of them are two, some of them are three. We've got one four-person office over in Columbus, and they're there to assist veterans with their benefits issues with the VA, and for that matter, for the few state benefits that we have, such as park passes and those kinds of things. They assist veterans in applying for those. Then we have our appeals division that's located over in Decatur, co-located with the VA regional office. Their function is to take that claim that the VA has rendered a decision on that the veteran's not happy with and decides that they want to file an appeal, to assist that veteran with that appeal and hopefully get a decision that is going to be more favorable to the interests and the desires of the veteran in terms of whatever his or her particular issues are. So those are the two main areas, I guess. George, is there anything else you think I need to bring up right quick? Okay. The other side of the house is what we call administration, health, and memorials, which is the area that I'm primarily responsible for, which includes our two state war veterans homes, one in Augusta, one in Milledgeville, our two state veterans cemeteries, one in Glenville down by Fort Stewart, and the other one is in Milledgeville. And then all of the support apparatus that we have here at the central office in terms of budgeting, human resources, logistics, all the cats and dogs. And fortunately, I've got a good guy here in the name of Mark Bannister, who's my operations director and handles most of that stuff on a daily basis. So that's kind of the main thrust of our organization, is those two main areas. Public information is another area that we have because we are charged by the state law to get the word out to veterans in the state of Georgia as to the fact that they are eligible for benefits, who they need to see, how we can help them to get those benefits. Charlotte May, who's with us today, is from our Public Information Division, and she and John Suggs keep our website going, do our annual reports, do all kinds of public information type things to get the word out. And then our last major function is our Veterans Education and Training Division, or they function as the state approving agency for the VA when it comes to any kind of education under the GI Bill. They are actually the ones who do the work on behalf of the VA to go out and survey the various institutions of higher learning, technical colleges, junior colleges, etc. Make sure that they're meeting all the requirements the VA has in order to approve those institutions for the students to receive GI benefits, GI Bill benefits. And then they also are responsible for approving apprenticeships and OJT programs. And we've got, I think, 1,620 or so programs of through the entire gamut currently that we are responsible for. We also, in addition to the approving function, actually become a monitor to make sure that once they're approved, that they're still complying with the VA rules. So our folks down there are on the road quite a bit, all around the state. So that's kind of the quick down and dirty overview. If anybody has any questions, be happy to take them.
Do we have any questions for the Commissioner? Really, I want to do this primarily for our freshman members, and we haven't had any freshman members show up today. Representative Tarvin.
Again, I apologize. We enjoy this every year, and you put a lot of work into this. But we appreciate what you do, and
Thank you, sir.
And hopefully, some that haven't heard some of these things that you guys do would be able to hear it next time. And again, our apologies for running late, but Brother Al Williams will talk too long.
And I think he came over here because he wants to talk some more.
Move we adjourn. He's going to talk some more.
And I don't really have any questions, but I tell you, I really appreciate all the action and the energy that you and the Commissioner and everybody else have put in this year to the awarding the certificates of honor. I've been involved in 10 or 15 of those events with the Commissioner and you, and I'm proud to say that my constituent who was running it from the DOD and Lieutenant General Kicklighter even came to 2 of them with me. Mm-hmm. So I really appreciate it, and it means so much to many of the Vietnam veterans who felt like they really didn't get a fair shake after Vietnam, and they were mistreated. And I've seen it light up in many of their eyes when I talked to some of them about did they want to put in. Now, unfortunately, I've run across several who were so, I think the word that comes to mind most clearly is they were so ill about everything that occurred that they wouldn't even put in for their certificate of honor, and I really hated to see that. But you know, it's been 50 years now, and as somebody who got one and went to Vietnam, I really appreciate all the efforts that you all put into it.
Well, we felt like that was a program that was much needed. I served over there as you did. I came back through Travis and San Francisco International and ran that gauntlet myself. I was fortunate I didn't get physically spit at, but the eyeballs and the turned heads and all that sort of stuff, I did experience all of that, and it hurt. And so this has been very, very helpful to, I know, a lot of people. And I've seen some of the same thing with some of the veterans who, when they have received the certificate and the DOD pin, tears well up in their eyes. And I've been fortunate. Because we've got the supply of the pins, I've had the opportunity on at least 3 occasions to take a pin off of my lapel and hand it to a Vietnam veteran, and just see the uplifting feeling that, so.
Well, I belong to the VFW, the American Legion, and the Marine Corps League, along with the Officers Association, and every one of those groups we did. Well, you were down there for
Yes,
the Savannah Military
Right.
Officers Association meeting, and along with congressmen, and a lot of those guys were very appreciative. And they
Very
came to
much
me
so.
afterwards, and some of them sent me notes and thanked me for being involved in that.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate y'all were right on top of it every time we sent in a list. You identified people and made sure they were accurate.
Yeah.
That they really had served in the military during that time frame, and I think it came off very well, and I think it bodes well for your agency. I appreciate it.
Well, and I think Representative Scott, you've had several of the ceremonies with several of your associates down in the South Fulton area, and I know the feedback that we've gotten from the folks that have gone down there to those ceremonies has been much the same thing that Chairman Hitchens is talking about, so
And
thank you for all of you. who-
Yeah, Representative Williams attended one with me at a church in Savannah too, and I really appreciated him coming up. Al's a Vietnam veteran also.
Yeah.
He couldn't get in the Marine Corps though; he had to go in the Army.
I just wanted to mention, if we could, that I was quite elated, and I went to an affair, a presentation with 35 veterans at the Performing Arts Center in Liberty County, and they surprised me, they had one for me. So I knew if I felt like that, I can imagine how those other folk felt, and which is great. We had 35 vets that showed up to get theirs. We must have had 200 people there, family
Yeah.
folk. And I did get in a fight in O'Hara International Airport in Chicago before security. I got jumped on, but I was young, good looking. I was the cops had to come save me.
I can believe the young part.
Well, I came through Travis too, and I tell you, when we landed, they told us if we had civilian clothes to put them on. If we didn't, go to the PX and put them on before you taxied down to International Airport to go home. And of course, we all had short hair. I'd come back through Okinawa and got my physical and everything, and had a haircut. They all knew who we were. So, yeah. Representative Scott.
Thank you all for coming over this afternoon. I would just like to say that I'm glad to see that we now have a female on the Veteran Service Board, Patricia Ross from Warner Robins Air Base, and she was here the other day when we honored the female veterans. Right. So I'm glad to see that we're moving in the right direction and putting female veterans on this board. Also glad to see of things that you all are beginning to do with female veterans, because at the end of the day, we do not want to be left out.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Representative Rogers.
I just feel like I'm sort of tacking on here, but I did want to tell you, first of all, appreciate everything that you guys, have done to try to ease that bitterness and that wound that was there. And I've also participated in a number of ceremonies, but probably the most meaningful thing to me was, it was kind of crazy. It was a Saturday evening about 5:30, and I happened to have some of the pins in the car, and a guy walking through Lowe's, and I was in there, and he had on a Vietnam veteran's hat. And I walked up to him and asked him if he had served, and he said, yeah, and asked him where, and we talked for just a second. I said, has anybody ever given you a certificate? And he goes, nobody's ever given me anything. And I looked at him, I said, well, you know what? If you'll give me your name and your address and what branch you were in and your rank and the years, I'll make certain you get a certificate and a lapel pin. As a matter of fact, I'll go ahead and give you a lapel pin right now. And he just kind of looked at me, and his wife was with us. She said, well, let's do that. We walked out to the car, and I got the lapel pin, and I handed it to him and shook his hand and said, I appreciate you, and I will make certain that you get a certificate. And he just kind of looked at me, didn't say a word, and he walked off. And I was like, oh, that's kind of strange. So I go and walk back into Lowe's. About 5 minutes later, his wife comes into Lowe's looking for me, and she said, my husband is in the car sobbing like a baby. She said, it's the first time anyone has ever said thank you to him.
Yeah.
So it means a lot.
Yeah.
Representative Glenn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And again, I just want to thank you guys for what you do each and every day. And I use the term guys loosely, meaning girls and guys. But I think one of the things that I've been looking for, and you have it right here, is the demographics per county.
Yeah.
Because that's extremely important. When I look at the demographics of Clayton County, when you got 21,000 veterans there, that's now information I can take to my commissioners and say, we need to start doing things. Cobb County has an initiative down there, I believe Chairman Earhart just put in to add a commissary, a private-public partnership down to that Veteran Family Resource Center. And I'm looking to hopefully start an initiative on the south side to try to bring something similar. So this helps me build a case for what we're trying to do on the south side, although it's not just for Clayton County, it's for the entire southern region.
Yeah.
So thank you.
And that's quite a benefit for the retired military personnel that are here. I think there's some 200,000 that's supposed to be around the Atlanta metro area, and you know, my wife went to the commissary many times when I was here in my prior job, and I may be confused, but I was led to believe that that we were going to have a commissary once they closed Fort Mack and Fort Gilliam, but that hadn't been the case. And many of us served on the Military Affairs Study Committee this year, and we didn't say it during the study committee, but we were really looking at BRAC, next round of BRAC. But what we found over in Cobb County was the county had moved forward, and you probably know about it. They had a contract with DOD, and they provide all the commissary foodstuffs and the other.
It's basically a bulk storage type.
And this is going to enlarge it tremendously to make it more like a real commissary. So it's a real benefit to a lot of the military people here who thought they would always have access to that. So.
Yeah, part of what I think happened was right about the time that Gillum and Mack closed. There was an effort to get a commissary up at Dobbins. In fact, there was a piece of property right off of South Cobb, right on one of the corners there of the Dobbins Reservation, that had been selected to be the site for that. And I think what happened was it was in the Air Force program in their 5-year defense plan, but it never moved. And at the same time, the Defense Commissary Agency was trying to cut back on sales stores because of the cost that was involved and everything. So it was a confluence of a bunch of negative stuff that all happened at the same time. So the fact that the commissary down at Robbins took the initiative with Cobb County to do what they're doing up there now really was a significant move forward. So I applaud you for wanting to do something in Clayton and South Fulton and Fayette and whoever else is going to come in that area. You know, that's what it's going to take is some grassroots efforts, and so I applaud you for doing that.
Well, what most of the veterans look at it is another one of those promises unkept.
Yeah,
You're right. They located here thinking that was going to be continued, and now they don't have got to drive to Robbins to. You know, I'm fortunate. I'm only 20 miles from Hunter Army Airfield and 40 miles from Fort Stewart and Parris Island. I have easy access, but most retired veterans don't in Georgia.
Of course, I imagine you spend most of your time over at Parris Island.
Well, you know, sometimes you look for the scenery you appreciate. And I think back 50 years ago when I went through there, it wasn't very appreciative then. But okay, let's. We certainly appreciate that. We don't have any more questions, and we like to move through some bills here. And I hope you can stick around for one because. We were going to stick around. Okay, thank you. First, I'd like to call on Representative Williams, and I don't. Well, we don't have a House bill on here. No, there's no number. Yeah. Because you're worn out talking in the well so much. And just to be sure, Representative Williams, this is LC 336837. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the committee. This is House Bill 245, LC 336837. I'm honored to bring it for more reasons than one. It's not just another bill to me. But this bill is to establish a process by the Professional Standards Commission by which military spouses may qualify for temporary certificates by endorsement or expedited. Certificates for those moving to Georgia with with their service member who may be transitioning, and it is to provide for definitions and other related matters as it relates to teachers, members of our education community. Last year, when I brought HB 821, it covered just about every other profession with basically the same language. And somehow, teachers slipped through the crack. Are we lowering the standards for teachers? No, not at all. The only difference is you don't have to wait for 6 months or sometimes more until your credentials catch up with you when you might have come from Fort Drum or Alaska or wherever else. This certainly will be a benefit for getting and keeping good teachers. And 35% of our military people re-up based on how their spouses are treated where they're stationed. I'll stand for questions, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Representative Glanton?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Williams, is it not true that currently, right now, we allow reciprocity from various states for various people to teach in Georgia with a provisional?
It is true.
And is it further not true that when it comes to our international teacher corps, whether they're coming from India, Colombia, Australia, or other points around the world, to come here on H-1B visas to teach in public schools, that they also are provided a provisional up until the time they get their certificates and endorsements?
That's true.
So, last question. So wouldn't it make sense for us, if we're going to do that, wouldn't it make sense for us to do this for military spouses?
Most certainly. It is definitely. Thank you so much for the question, Representative. It's just taken a while. Sometimes the obvious takes so long for us to do, but it'd be a great help to places like my district, Liberty County, where 71% of the population is either active duty, retired, or veterans, or the spouses thereof. It's a huge number, and we've seen cases where people have given up on careers because it was so cumbersome just to get their paperwork caught up with them. And I always like to refer to a young lady who was an RAN at Fort Hood in Texas. She came to Georgia. 6 months later, and no license, she moved to another field, the field she's still in. And so we lost an RAN because we were just so cumbersome.
Well, and thank you for that, Representative. And one last point is, if you're here on a J-1 visa, and I do this all the time, every day in recruitment, if you're here on a J-1 visa, there is no requirement for you to be certificate before you actually teach in our schools, and there are provisions provided. So, Mr. Chairman, depending on the posture for this measure, at the appropriate time, I'd like to make a motion.
Representative Rogers?
Thank you. Representative Williams, I think is a great bill. I know we did some stuff last year, and it was phenomenal. Let me ask you this. Does this also apply to, like, school counselors?
It will apply to school counselors, and for some reason we've kind of put counselors kind of out of the loop, but it will apply to counselors, anyone applying for employment. We covered all the others last year. There's some other, like school nurses, et cetera, that we've already covered. This will cover counselors.
Is it not true that in the budget this year that we put about $425,000 in there to try to find more counselors for schools, for military?
That is true because military kids tend to have a unique set of needs, and we have a higher rate of suicide among military kids than the rest of the population. It's something. I had children literally in my district up until about last year. I haven't checked in a couple of years. 12 years old, 10 years old, had never seen their daddy long enough to know him because he's been on so many deployments. And these are children who are reaching preteen years who have no relationship beyond an occasional call, because we are the most deployed unit in the Army. That's the third ID, most deployed. And so Kids didn't even get to know. So this creates problems. My great respect for the great generation, the World War II veteran, it got greater years after I came out of Vietnam, because I saw so much tragedy from Vietnam. And then these were folk that stayed 3 and 4 years at the time. It's almost unbelievable.
You're correct, and I would think that because of the fact that this is a military spouse or familiar with the military conditions or whatever, that they would be much more able to relate to these students.
Most definitely.
And I'd be proud to second Representative Glanton's motion when the time is right, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Williams, thank you again for this bill. We've heard about this issue a lot on the Military Affairs Committee as we travel the state. Just one quick question on line 21, where you have the definition of service member. Just out of curiosity, should we insert the word duty after active to where it reads means an active duty or reserve member instead of just?
You could have a point there. I don't see any problem with it. What they're trying to say is you're active or reserve member. You can, you'd have to put duty in front of, and I'm thinking we might run into a little hiccup here because, I don't know, how many lawyers you got on this committee? Not many. Lawyer. Most of us would understand this, but we understand the lawyering. And you're right. I would hope that we're getting so close to crossover. I really hate to mess with it.
What's that?
Well, I think the word member takes care of it.
Okay.
I think so too.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that it
Okay.
would catch
And,
it.
and I appreciate you making sure that we're tight, because we certainly want this to fly once it hits the floor.
All right. No further questions, Chairman.
Okay, does anybody in the audience have anything that they would like to comment on with regard to this bill? Commissioner?
It didn't cut out on me, Dan. I don't know what it is about.
The only thing I wanted to say was one of the jobs that I have the honor of doing at the department is chairing the Returning Veterans Task Force. That group is let's see, we got 13 state agencies that are members, plus we've got some federal government institutions such as Fort Stewart attends our meetings. One of the things that we are charged with is trying to make state services more available to veterans who are getting out of the military and their family members. When I saw this legislation, that immediately struck me that this is something that would help to make Georgia a more veteran-friendly state. It's been an issue that we have been grappling with on the task force, along with the workforce division over at Economic Development, about trying to get more expeditious certifications for military-related families. And this would go a long way, I think, to do that in this particular instance. And so I would encourage an affirmative vote on this.
Thank you very much. And I don't mean to delay this, but I think from the other side too, I think it's beneficial for the students to have a teacher that's probably seen many areas of our country and perhaps part of the world that has a different perspective on things than those who've grown up in one particular area and lived there all their life. Okay, no further questions? Call the question, Representative Glanton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move do pass.
Move do pass in a second on LC 336837. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very kindly, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee.
Got three more. Next one is liability for Defense Force and National Guard. John's going to do it. Tim Barr was going to do it and had a personal emergency. The next bill on the calendar is House Bill 309. Unfortunately, Representative Barr had a family emergency. He came and talked to me about an hour and a half ago. He had to go directly home. So the Vice Chairman Deffenbaugh is going to carry the bill for him.
Thank you, here. Am I on? Am I on? I guess so.
Yes, you are.
Yes, okay. I'd like to present the bill, is it 307? I'm trying to read what the note is here.
309, I believe.
309, okay.
Well, I know, and I've got two bills after this, and I don't know the House bills because I thought they would be on the...
LC 1399ER.
That's correct.
The bill is just basically going to clarify some wording to include all of the different branches of service. At present, on line 10, it says the activities of the Georgia National Guard when engaged in state and federal training. And we're going to insert after National Guard or organized militia, which is the state term that would include the Air Force, Navy, state militia. So it's kind of just to make it a little broader than just the Georgia National Guard. Any questions? Comments?
Well, I have a question. I'm not sure that's the case. It's the National Guard or organized militia. And organized militia, I think, includes the State Defense Force. And
Yes.
he just got this thing a few minutes ago. So he's not the author of the bill. But and what it does is exclude them from liability for the training training that's assigned or active duty, if they're called active duty. But you know, if you take a tank from Fort Stewart and you're out there and you go down the road and you run over cars, it doesn't exempt you from that type of liability that's arbitrary or capricious. But the general things that you do during your duties as a member of the military service, if somebody is in some fashion hurt or damaged property, the liability is removed from that individual. Got a couple of questions here.
You may be available to answer them, maybe.
Well, I'm like you. I read over it, but you know, I don't think we have any real responsibility here for the active duty military services.
I'm sorry, Representative Barr's not available.
Representative Rogers.
Commissioner, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but it's my understanding that organized militia in the state of Georgia is the Georgia State Defense Force. Is that correct?
Right.
Anybody know?
That's my understanding.
That is my understanding. It's an unpaid civilian organization.
And we're fortunate enough today to have our attorney with us, and he'd like to clarify the whole issue.
Sure. The organized militia is a term used throughout the OCGA. A lot of times it is defined. In Title 38, it's defined as the Army National Guard, the Air National Guard, the Georgia Naval Militia when organized, and the State Defense Force when organized, and includes any unit, component, element, headquarters, staff, or cadre thereof, as well as any member or members. So I guess my point being, it might be better to spell out, if you want to include the State Defense Force, we should do that, or the Georgia Naval Militia, we can say that, or we can point to where organized militia is defined somewhere else. But just saying organized militia could be interpreted different ways.
Well, and I'm fairly well versed on it also, and I agree with you on this, because we had to change the requirements for the Adjutant General a couple of years ago because it said that the Adjutant General had to be a member of the Georgia National Guard, Air National Guard, or Georgia State Militia, or the organized militia. Under those guidelines, Colin Powell could not have been the Adjutant General of the state of Georgia because the Army, the Navy, Marine Corps, whatever. So at that time, I think it was interpreted that Georgia State Militia was the the organized naval militia or the Georgia State Defense Force.
And so,
Because there is a naval militia that people don't even know.
Right, right. So if you want to clarify it, we can do that. Not a problem. Yeah, that's 3822. It defines organized militia in paragraph 10. So that's one way to do it. If everyone feels comfortable with that, of course.
If I understand what's being said is that the possible interpretation of organized militia would include all of the branches?
No.
The organized militia would be the Georgia State.
Only the Georgia State.
Force or the Georgia State Naval Militia.
And the Air National Guard and the Army National Guard. But I think it's already defined. We may be arguing about it here, but it looks to me like there's a precedent, and
I think there's a precedent for the organized
Right.
militia that was set from the action of
okay.
Well, I guess that was my question, was what was the organized militia? Because to me, like you said, it could mean anything. So I think that it would be better spelled out so that people can actually know what do we mean by organized militia. Because, you know, me just thinking off the top, I could think of, it could be any group that organized name of the military. You have people that have gotten out, they could organize. You have all different types of groups. So I think it needs to be spelled out according to the Title 38.
Well, the key word is organized, because a militia, I think it's defined by the Georgia Constitution, if I'm not mistaken, is an active group of citizens between the ages of so-and-so, so-and-so, are subject to call at any time, dating back though.
And I don't believe anybody has the authority to organize militia except the state government.
Okay.
Yeah. The governor has to call the initiative, has to call the militia order.
Also, this is the State Tort Claims Act, so it's referring to waiving the sovereign immunity of the state, exceptions to the waiver of sovereign immunity of the state. So he's talking about state functions here.
Okay.
And you can
It can be clarified if you like, or as you please.
and you can see here it doesn't exclude traffic accidents.
Correct.
So, Representative Clark.
If for the point of clarity, I would be willing to make a motion that says to insert after organized militia as defined by Code Section 3822, and that would clarify any kind of if we want to do that.
I certainly don't have a problem with it. Do we need to do an amendment for that, or just?
You can do a sub. I can give it to you pretty much immediately.
Okay. Is that agreeable to a sub? Okay. Any further questions? Any questions from the audience? Hearing none, I assume we're ready to entertain a motion.
Ma'am? Yes, sir. I believe this is House Bill 309.
That's correct.
I make a motion we do pass.
As amended.
I make a motion we do pass as amended with the code section added.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. One, two, three, four. Have to have six, don't we? I believe it's six. Well, we got two more, and one of them is going to be very fast. Oh, okay. Is that more important than this? Well, this next one I've got is it's going to be real fast. The other one may take a little more time, but
Talk fast, let's go.
here with you to the end.
This first bill, and I apologize, it doesn't have a House bill number on it, and I've got it in my folder there, but I didn't look it up as I was busy. But it's LC 440308, and it came to me from the Veterans Affairs organization, and what it does is it clarifies certain dates with regard to those veterans who are eligible for veterans care in the veterans home. And what it does is it closes the gap from the Vietnam era to the Desert Storm era. And let me read the dates here. During the period January 31st, 1955, which is the conclusion of the Korean War, to August 1st, 1990. Anybody within that period would now be eligible. They said they have the availability and the space, and as you and I know, you don't always have to be in the war to be eligible. Many people in the Vietnam era didn't go to Vietnam. They sat behind a desk somewhere, or a cook or a truck driver. Many people in that gap area were over in Germany facing off with the Russians, or they were over in Korea facing off at the DMZ in some of their incursions. So I think it's only fair. They say it's that they want it, and I would appreciate any positive consideration.
Any questions? Light it up. What? Two. Okay.
At the appropriate time, I'll make a motion.
Okay. Any questions? We got to go. Any questions for the audience? You're on.
Move due pass.
Second.
322.
Thank House
House
you.
Bill 322. Have a motion and a second to do pass. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? It passed.
Okay, the next one, and I don't have 422. And I looked them up yesterday. I should have known it was 322 and 422, but this is another one that was brought to me by the Department of Veterans Affairs, and
What number you on?
LC 440323.
Okay. And what was the number again?
House
427. Got it.
And this
Thank
is
you.
kind of a unique bill. It took them a couple days in legal services to come up with this, but it became known to our Veterans Affairs organization that there were several people that wanted to contribute money to the veterans' homes. One of whom was one of my fellow alums from Georgia Southern University, Luke Bryan, and some of his country music compatriots. And in order to accomplish that, we had to come up with some language to provide for a 501c3 and a Georgia Veterans Service Foundation board to accommodate that. As you can read in there, I think they've accomplished that, and it'll be a board. The Commissioner of the Department of Veterans Service will appoint the members to it to make sure that the funds are dispersed in a proper fashion. But the intent is to help the Georgia Veterans Home so that it can be stable. And of course, you understand that the country music or the singers or the entertainers or whoever decides to contribute to this would like to have it be tax-free so that they could get a credit for it, and that's the reason for the legislation.
Any questions? Ready for a motion? Move that do pass. Got a second? Got a second? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Passed.
Thank you. If we have no further questions, anybody got any questions, comments? We're adjourned. Thank you very much.
Anybody wants to give money to the state, I'll take it.